Hello and welcome back to my weekly reading update and also my explanation of where I've been because I did not post a weekly reading update last Tuesday and this update is a day late and I promise I have a good reason. I graduated from grad school last week. I got my master's in classics with an emphasis in the teaching of Latin. I'm done. I survived. I have my master's degree now. And then also that same week I got a job. So I have a teaching job now, which is very exciting. And that means I now also know what town I'm going to live in, which means I also then started apartment hunting, found an apartment. So in the space of less than 2 weeks, I went from not having my MA, a job, or an apartment to having all three of those things. Yeah. So all that to say, I have not had a ton of time to read. But I did finish one book and almost finish another, so we're going to talk about both of them. So I finished Octavia Butler's Dawn. It was exceptional. And then I'm almost done with my reread of Note of the Night. So I have a reading update of only good books this week. So, Dawn by Octavia Butler. I cannot stress enough that this book was phenomenal. It might be the best book I have read so far in 2024, and I'm up to 70 books so far in 2024. I mean, Dawn is exceptional in that it works. You read it, and it just, on every level, prose, themes, plot, characterization, it does exactly what it needs to do. If you didn't see my last reading update, Dawn follows Lilith, who is one of the very last humans in the entire universe. A few select humans were saved from a species-wide extinction event by some supposedly benevolent aliens, but as the story progresses, of course, you find out that these aliens maybe want some things from Lilith that she's not willing to give. I think what I like about this book the most is that you can read it in layers, and every single layer stands on its own. So if you want to just read this book as a good time, if you just want it to be a first contact story, the story about Lilith and her interactions with these aliens and her struggles to reestablish humanity, you can, and it works extremely well just on that level. It's a fascinating story. It's at times a horrifying story. But at the same time, you can very much read Dawn allegorically as the story of these sort of benevolent or seemingly benevolent imperialists who come in and try to civilize a culture that they think is beneath them. Because that's what this alien race is doing. And I guess I'm going to dig a little bit into very mild spoilers here. Nothing that you wouldn't find out in the opening chapters of the book. But if you like to go in totally blind, maybe skip to the next section of this video. But basically, this alien race is what they describe themselves as are traders, like genetic traders. And so they actually modify humans' genetic code to make them supposedly better. So they modify Lilith, they give her like extra strength, they give her extra healing abilities, all those kinds of things. But she didn't ever ask for it, and she also didn't really want it. And her children, because of this genetic modification, are going to look more like the aliens than they're going to look like her. And so the question is, has she sort of been ship of Theseus out of humanity? How many pieces of a human can you change before they're not a human anymore? So anyway, as I've said, you can totally read Dawn as an allegory for colonialism, an allegory for what happens, when the white folks come in and they're like, well, we're just going to civilize you. It's for your own good. You say you don't want it, but really you'll thank us later. But it never feels preachy. It never feels forced. All of those themes come completely organically from what feels like a very specific depiction of humanity's interactions with this very specific alien race. A third level on which you can read Dawn, though, is as a biblical allegory, right? The main character's name is Lilith. She's tasked with restarting humanity, with populating the earth with humanity after this near extinction event. And I'm not going to spoil the ending, but Lilith's name is relevant. So if you like first contact stories at all, if you are even a little bit interested in this book, I highly recommend checking it out because at least one of these levels, I think you'll enjoy it. Although do be aware that a main theme of this book is consent, and because of that, there are some, I guess you could say, like dubiously consensual sexual encounters, and they are meant to be read as icky. They are meant to be read as not good. But please do take care of yourselves and maybe look up the content warnings if that seems like you might want to do that. Alright, and also, I have been rereading Nona the Ninth. This is my first time rereading it since I originally read the book by listening to it on audiobook, and I'm actually really glad that I decided to read it in print, because there are a lot of things that didn't translate to the audiobook super well. I love the Locked Tomb audiobooks, for the record. I think Harrow is actually better in audiobook than in print. Moira Quirk, the narrator, does an absolutely fantastic job with what is sometimes an incredibly impenetrable book series. And again, I think the narration, having it read to you, works extremely well for Harrow the Ninth, where there are all of these second person sections, and so hearing someone speak to you and say you, I mean, it feels a little bit more natural than reading it. Nona, however, I'm glad that I'm reading it in print, and I recognize that that's not something that's doable for everyone, but if it's doable for you, I would recommend trying it if you haven't before, because there are a lot of sort of typographic features that can't come through the audiobook, at least not in terms of an audiobook that's just read to you. I was super confused by the John chapters when I was reading Nona on audiobook for the first time, because the audiobook doesn't differentiate between John's dialogue that is marked with quotation marks and John's dialogue that is not marked with quotation marks. And so I didn't get the differentiation between when John is speaking to Harrow and when he's speaking to Alecto. And I'm finally getting that now. It's kind of incredible to me in general how much these books reward rereading. Like, I mean, Nona the Ninth, it feels like a different book on reread. And I think all three of the Locked Tomb books that are out so far have felt this way. Where the first time, you know, Muir always picks the narrator that knows the absolute least about what's going on, and so we as the readers know nothing about what's going on either, and you kind of just have to embrace the flow and the deluge of information that's coming at you. But the second time, you know what's happening, and you can pick up all of these little things and these conversations that people are having in front of the main character. I have so many theories, I have so many questions, I have so many predictions about how I think Alecto is going to have to go. I would love to make just like an Alecto theories video, so I might have to do that. But highly recommend rereading Nona if you've only read Nona once. If you've never read Nona, this video, or this part of the video, probably makes no sense, but highly recommend.